Hello and welcome to a little bit of a brief summary of some deeper terms that we can use to analyze and unpack visual images if we see them in texts in IB Lang and Lit. A lot of the terms from this little presentation have a big connection with studying photography as well as studying the language of visual advertising. The first thing to think of is what we analyze when we look at a photo. We still need to think of the main big five. We need to think of the subject and the content. We need to think of the audience and the purpose. We need to think of the style or the genre, the conventions of the photo or the visual text we're looking at. And more than anything, we need to think of the content, so the stylistic devices. It's important that we use some of the elements of photography techniques. When we go to take a photo, the shot size plays a big difference. For example, we've got Steve Jobs in a close-up. A close-up of a face gives a personal connection. Then over here we've got David Beckham in a mid-shot, and a mid-shot gives more of a sense of style or action. And then finally we've got a wide shot that shows more of the landscape or the setting. These shot types can be used to give a different emotional response or a response to the ideas from the viewer. Another one is to think of the angle of a shot. We see this all the time in social media photos or in films. Generally, a high angle is when the camera looks down on a subject. It makes the subject look smaller. And a low angle is when the camera is looking up at an object, and it makes the object or the subject of the photo look more bigger or more domineering or more powerful. Sometimes photographers use a tilted shot to give a sense of chaos or disarray or a skewed approach. Another photography term to think of is the mode of address. When we look at this, it's where is the subject facing? If the subjects are facing towards the camera, there's a direction, there's a personal connection made to the viewer of the image. But sometimes photographers and designers like to have an object facing off into the distance, where there's a sense of voyeurism or looking in and witnessing an action or something like that. Another term to be using, and we talked about this in the Volkswagen advertisements, was composition and framing. And that's the way that an image is composed on the screen. Maybe there is some lines or some symmetry that's devised in the photograph or in the image. Maybe there's a frame that's designed or potentially framed just from the subject of the photo. These are all things that help specify what the main subject is in the photograph or in the visual advertisement, and that can give us a bit of a tip of the preferred reading that the designer wants us to have. Contrast and lighting and negative space are also terms, photography terms that can be used that we can help analyze visual texts. We've got the rule of thirds, which we discussed last week about how designs are pleasing in the eye and help viewer read and make sense of an image, particularly in reading to determine what the preferred reading is or what the intended message is. We've also got photography terms like focus and shutter speed and aperture or depth of field to help bring a specific object in the photograph into dominance. To help us make sense that that is the preferred reading or that's the most important object. Photographs can do lots of different things, and I think that's another important thing for us when we look at visual advertising or other visual texts, is to determine, is the photograph designed to show gritty realism? Is it designed to be surreal? Maybe it's been photoshopped or modified in another way. Or is it designed to give a bit of a spectacle and to make something feel more exciting or more humorous or more poignant than it normally would be? Finally, visual advertisements and other visual texts also use illustrations where the blurred where the text type between photography and illustration is blurred for specific purposes. Often illustrations can give a fantasy reality. They can make things appear to be the best or the finest or some perfect world. They can make things surreal, where symbolism can be built into an image in more clear way to make something feel more more symbolic or more purposeful for that that main point of the image or the advertisement. And then finally, illustrations can be used to humor or lighten the topic. And what this does is it can be used to make something more humorous and again contribute to the preferred reading. So these are some of the other techniques that we can use when we look at a visual text, techniques that come from the world of photography that also help us figure out what the preferred reading or what the narrative that an advertiser or the designer of a visual image wants us to see. I hope that helped you learn something, and that was 6 or 7 minutes of your life that you got something big out of. Thanks for watching, and subscribe to my channel.